Okay, hi everyone, Pranam. My name is Matt Swan. I am, along with my colleague Louisa, who is also with us today. We are the joint head of outreach and engagement at DTA Wales, and we both jointly manage the EGIN programme. So it's really great to see everyone here today, and we are going to be discussing the topic of moving towards sustainable transport. And it's a topic we're really part of what EGIN's doing is about. EGIN is all about helping communities in Wales to take their first steps to tackle climate change, become more sustainable, and we sort of particularly wanted to work with those who are most at risk of being hurt by climate change, but also those that are just beginning to think about what they could do and how to take steps to start to tackle it. So we've been running for just over a year, and it's been great to support many groups across Wales already. We've got funding for another 5 years, so it's a long-term programme. As part of what we do, as well as supporting groups directly, is try to bring together people to talk about different themes and topics within the whole wide area of climate change. And one of those is, of course, transport, and how do we make our transport more sustainable. And so it'd be great, just a bit of housekeeping before we carry on. We do have 3 speakers with us today, which I'll introduce in a moment. 2 of them will be speaking in Welsh. So we do have a Welsh interpreter with us today who will be translating into English. So if you would rather listen to the English translation, then if you look on your Zoom screen, you should be able to see a globe with interpretation underneath it, and click that and select English. And then you'll be able to hear the English interpretation whenever someone is speaking in Welsh. And you should also be able to hear people when they're just speaking in English. So that's the plan. And if you'd rather just listen to the original Welsh, then don't click that button. You'll just hear the original audio of everybody. Hopefully that's going to work for everyone, but do shout if it doesn't. Yeah, and in the chat, and our translators put a message in there to remind you what to do. So we would also like to ask everyone, if you wish, to just put into the chat who you are, and maybe what community group, if you are an organisation you're linked with, whereabouts you're based in Wales, just so we have an idea of who is on the call today. And we hope it can be an interactive session. The kind of structure of it will be, we'll be asking our 3 speakers who are all from different community projects around Wales, to give a kind of short, maybe up to 10-minute summary of what their project's about and what they think of in terms of what how they're helping to achieve sustainable transport in their own different ways. And at the end of that, we'll hear from all 3, and then there'll be a chance for them to take questions from anybody in the room, and we'll hopefully get a bit of a discussion going as well. We'll aim to finish at 3 o'clock. So that is the topic for today and the way it's going to work. I will now introduce our speakers. So today we're very excited to have with us Willoughby Zimmerman, who is a lifelong environmental and cycle advocacy activist. A veteran of over a decade in the cycle industry, Willoughby started Spokesperson CIC in 2019 in Cardiff, I believe. Spokesperson is a community interest company with a mission to increase access to cycling for people from marginalised communities. We also have Andrew Capel, who co-founded and led Llanelli Car Club in 2007, beginning with just 1 loaned car and their members. Their efforts eventually resulted in sustainable self-funding model. And over 12 years, that club's expanded, and we'll hear more about that from Andrew. He plays a crucial role in community outreach, grant applications, and mentoring new car clubs. And Andrew is also an EGIN peer mentor. He's also involved in running the Trydani car clubs in South Wales. And our third speaker is Hugh Davis, who comes from North Wales. He works with Partneriaeth Ogwen as the Dyffryn Caredig project manager with over 30 years of experience working in the third sector. He worked with Partneriaeth's Chief Officer Melanie Davis on the Dyffryn Gwyrdd project for 2020 to 2023 and the Bikes Ogwen Active Travel project from 2021 to 2022. And he's now responsible for Dyffryn Caredig, which is the latest project of the enterprise, which focuses on sustainable community transport. So we're going to start here. First of all, we're going to hear from Willoughby. So if I pass over to you, Willoughby, and I'll share my screen so I can share your slides. Hang on 1 second. And if you have any questions throughout, feel free to just pop them in the chat so they don't get forgotten. I will pick them up at the end after the three speakers have given their presentations. Share screen. Why am I not seeing share screen? Okay, you all see that hopefully?
So yeah, this is my first slide. That's my my logo, spokesperson CIC, and what we do is basically trying to break down the barriers to cycling, specifically for marginalized people, because when I started it up, I noticed that I guess my interest is, there's already a very small percentage of people who are cycling, and then there's a lot of people who are not. And what my previous experience has told me, after so many years working in cycling, is that why those people are not cycling and choosing active travel in general, but my expertise is cycling, is it's never ever because they don't want to. Everybody who is in that majority of people who are not choosing active travel, there is a barrier there. So if you go to the next slide, obviously when I started up, I started up a spokesperson in 2019, but I've gotten some statistics from more recent statistics from the Bicycle Association report from 2023. They haven't changed much. I'm not going to surprise anybody in 5 years that there hasn't been a huge change in the UK in the statistics related to who cycles and who doesn't. So, for example, it's not going to surprise anybody, I'm sure, that 2 times as many men cycle on a regular basis as women. And if you go to the next slide, please. So out of ethnic minority groups, something like 14% of people that are Black, Asian, or minority ethnic cycle on a regular basis, 12% of people with a disability, and LGBTQ plus people, 19% of them cycle on a regular basis. And so you can see in each one of these categories, there's a little sliver of blue. But what I'm really interested in is that much larger percentage of the pie that's in red. Because that's a lot of people. And if you go to the next slide, please. So the Anna Karenina principle, all happy families are alike, but each unhappy family is unhappy in its own way, is the opening lines of the novel. So what I've found is that most people, the reasons that people do not cycle are myriad and as diverse as people themselves, but it's never, well, not really never, but in my experience, I've yet to have the person that when they say, oh, I don't cycle, has just been, when I've said, oh, why not? Has just been like, don't feel like it. You know, I mean, on a day like today, perhaps, but like as a regular thing, as a continual thing, why do you not own a bike? Why do you or participate in cycle share schemes or whatever? The answer I don't think has ever been it doesn't appeal to me. Obviously, in principle, cycling appeals to everybody. So I set out in 2019 to try and sort of address that and find ways um to change that. I don't cycle because I'm not able to, into I cycle because I'm able to, and there's and figure out what those various barriers are. Um so and um my focus has mostly been obviously there's like things that are sort of top down, that are sort of society-wide big structural things that would encourage more people to cycle. And I think a lot of people that are trying to encourage and promote active travel are really focused on those. And they're great and they're good. And they will encourage more cycling overall. However, there's a lot of things that are not simply more infrastructure that are not going to help that. You know, many people, what I found working with people of color and LGBTQ people is that what's preventing them from cycling has, like, for example, has been their experiences of going outside in public, and especially doing something that is generally quite social. You do it within like a social group of your peers, like learning to cycle. Most of us learn to cycle amongst other kids when we're a kid. And in those groups, lots of people tend to, who are marginalized, whether their experiences are those of people of color or LGBTQ plus people or LGBTQ plus people of color. They experience harassment, bullying. So then going into that space, which, let's face it, is a vulnerable space to go into, like trying to operate this machine and not hurt yourself and possibly look like a bit foolish doing it. And with that fear on top of that of the bullying and harassment, that is a barrier. And it's not a barrier that more psychopaths will fix. So yeah, that's sort of what spokesperson kind of does. And in order to try and address those barriers, try and bring them down. There's the very, very physical, measures that we do. Like I operate programs that are grant funded, and do things like teaching adults to cycle and forming groups of adult learners. And those are all people from the same background. So I've recently completed a project where I worked with LGBTQ plus people, adults that didn't know how to cycle. And then once they learned how to cycle, I taught them how to cycle. Once they learned how to cycle, they formed like a sort of buddy system group where they then came along for the next person's lessons and then would cycle together as like cycling buddies. So in addition to sort of teaching them cycling, it's also building a supportive relationship within the LGBTQ plus community. So there's those projects, but also I feel like there's a lot of thought that's necessary to sort of crack the problem, if you will. Looking at things from new angles. So for example, I use a lot of my ways of thinking of strategies. I base them on the bike themselves. My metaphorical, like let's take that as our jumping off point. Maybe because I'm a mechanic, but so for example, I've worked with my neighbors in Buttetown. There's a lot of people that are Muslim, and a lot of Muslim women don't want to cycle in clothing that they see as immodest, and also it's just like not their regular clothing. And I know traditionally a lot of people would be like, nope, gotta have your trousers, you've got to have the fabric to be tight so that it's not going to get caught and everything. Well, why should we expect people to change themselves when the technology is able to change? You're simply able to fit guards around wheels. You're simply able to fit mud guards onto the back and skirt guards onto it. Like you can change the technology to enable people. So rather than expecting people to change themselves to access the technology to make concessions to their comfort, to their appearance, to their self-expression, we don't expect that from any other form of technology, really. So why not change the bike? and that is like a very physical example of that. But I do believe that that sort of thinking is sort of necessary and integral to the entire way we look at how we approach allowing diversity to thrive and increase within cycling and active travel. I've rabbited on for a bit. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, we could take one question now, and then we'll have a more general question and answer session after the other two speakers have spoken, I think. So maybe just one question if anyone has one.
Oops, yeah, me, Andrew. That it sounds really good what you're doing. I mean, I've just posted saying that the cycling buddy idea is one of those key things, and then you also said about arranging the bike to work for the person as opposed to making the person fit the bike. I mean, is there a third key aspect to what you're doing that you haven't mentioned?
Uh, I'm really conscious of time. I mean, I feel like
Okay.
there's
That's okay. It's one for you to think about because I think there is a
yeah.
third, is what I'm trying to say, but you may not be aware of it. But it just struck me that you've got two key things there that really make a difference to in the way you're doing it. And I think there might be a third, but I'll leave that for you as homework.
I think some of it is we we really pitch cycling and push it really hard for its benefits. You know, if you cycle, it will benefit everyone around you. You know, if you get out of your car, you know, it's almost like trying to sell people broccoli. No, that's not a good example because I like broccoli. Brussels sprouts, you know, is good for you. Do it. And I think we kind of sell ourselves short in that it's actually fun. Unlike Brussels sprouts. It um it actually, and not only is it fun, it gives you a way to be social. It's just a more social way of moving through the world. It gives you better well-being. So and also I think it's important that we recognize that people, even if, you know, I think we tend to very much focus on how can we get people with the money to own cars to stop driving their cars into cities and creating pollution. How can we get them onto bikes? And like, and it's almost like because they're the focus of a lot of people's efforts, we almost value them more. And it's like, well, hang on, you know, there's a lot of benefits to cycling. And just because a person is disabled and unemployed doesn't mean that they shouldn't also we shouldn't be doing our bit to make sure that they get those benefits too. Just
Thank you, Willoughby.
because
I'm just conscious of time because
yeah.
loads of
So
brilliant points. Would you mind if we moved on to the next speaker?
Yes.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll have a bit more of time for discussion after we've heard from Andrew and Hugh. So next speaker is Andrew. So without further ado, I will move on to yourself, Andrew.
Okay, diolch, Matt. So, Andrew Capel ydw i. Dwi'n byw yn Penrhyn Coch ger Aberystwyth. Yn dechrauais i clwb cer cyntaf yn 2007 yn Llanidloes. Gyda 3 o bobl eraill ac yn y llun ar y chwith mae'n Erisha gyda fi heb barf ac Bob. So gyda car cyntaf Peugeot 405. Okay, so cyn i ni allu lansio, roedd rhaid i ni gweithio allan ble i barcio y car, faint i'w godi, ac yswiriant wrth gwrs, cytuneb aelodaeth, ac ble i adael y goriadau hefyd. Ac olaf yw oedd systemau archebu a bilio. So ar ôl hynny, bant ni ac benthygrwyd ein 3 car cyntaf i ni gan aelodau. Ac ar ôl ni'n dau blwyddyn, gallwn ni fforddio prynu cer wedyn hynny. Ac yn 2019, prydleison ni ein car trydan cyntaf ac mae yn y llun yn y canol, mae Zoe Zoe glas EV car trydan cyntaf. Ac wedyn yn 2021, daethon ni yn y byddus fel trip E neu trip 2. Pan wnaethon ni ymgymryd a prosiect Clwb Cer Trydan Canolbarth Cymru o Drenewydd Agored, Open Newtown. Ac wedyn yn 2023, dechreuon ni redeg clwbiau car trydanu sydd wedi lleoli yn Ne Orllewin Cymru, ac mae car yn y llun ar there yw beth yw Hohen Lycona. Mae car yn Llandrindod gyda Clwb Cer Llandrindod. So nesaf. Iawn. Okay, so sut mae'n gweithio? Sut mae clwbiau cer yn gweithio? Wel, yn gyntaf, mae rhaid pawb yn cwblhau ffurflengaeth aelodaeth yn bennaf ar gyfer y yswiriant. Ac hefyd, bydd pob aelod o bydd rhaid pob aelod gan sesiwn ymgyfarwyddo gyda cydlynydd lleol, ac mae cydlynydd lleol yn gweithio yn ran amser, ond mae'n person bwysig i gwneud yn siŵr bod y clwb cer yn rhedeg yn dda iawn. Hefyd, mae gennym ni so system archebu a thalu, gyda app neu ar-lein. So felly ffïoedd, sut ydych chi'n ei talu? So ffi archebu o 2.50 ceiniog ac £2 yr awr wedi gapio a 42 am bob 24 awr. Hefyd, da ni'n disgwyl bod pawb yn rhoi car yn ôl gyda gwefr o 80%. Ac yn olaf, mae'n ffi aelodaeth misol o £2. Mae ffi hwn yn cyfyngu eich rhwymedigaeth i £250. So, tasech chi, dim ond tasech chi cael damwain, a tasech chi arfau, so basech chi talu dim mwy na £250. So, felly, slide olaf. So, ble ydyn ni? Rwan hyn, da ni yn Llanidloes, wrth gwrs, gyda dau car. Mae dau car Zoes. Yn y Penlleth, gyda dau car hefyd, un Zoe ac un Berlingo. So, car yn Llanymddyfri ac car yn Llandeilo. Yn Llandrindod, un car, Kona, ac yn fuan gobeithio bydd car nesaf, ail car hefyd. Mae angen ail car yn Llandrindod. Cwmgwrs, un car, Cilgedi, un car, ac Pennin Coch, fel yn y llun na, bydd ein clwb cer nesaf ac wedi dechrau hefyd. So wedi gorffen? Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you, Andrew. Diolch yn fawr.
Croeso.
And then we'll just move smoothly onto Hugh. So let me just bring open the slides.
Diolch yn fawr, Matt. Na i ddechrau siarad tro ti'n cael hyd i'r sleid, os dyna'n iawn. Pnawn da bob, Hugh Davies, partneriaeth Ogwen. Diolch yn fawr i Willoughby ac Andrew. Mae'n dda i fi, dwi'n cael dilyn dau o rei da, so mae hynna'n beth da iawn. Wedyn, dwi am gadw at yr amser na i weibio drwyddo fo, ond dwi ar gael am gwestiynau wedyn hefyd. Dwi'n gweithio eventau gymdeithasol yn Nyffryn Ogwen ym Mhedra Bethesda o'r enw Partneriaeth Ogwen, sy'n mynd ers 2014. Da ni'n cyflogi 23 o bobl bellach mewn sawl maes gwaith, ond dwi am ganolbwyntio ar gwaith y Dyffryn Caredig. Mi ddaru ni sefydlu yn gwaith i ddechrau efo cefnogaeth y Cronfa Gymunedol Loteri yn 2020, ond ar gyfer gwneud hynny, oedd yna waith ymchwil wedi cael ei wneud gan y prif swyddog Malery Davies, gan Christian Graham o Cyfeillion y Ddaear, a hefyd gen rywun sy'n ar yr alwad, Mark Gahn, sy'n bellach yn Cyngor Gwynedd. Diolch yn fawr, Mark. Be ddaru hynny ddangos oedd bod na angen am drafnidiaeth gymunedol yn ardal Dyffryn Ogwen, poblogaeth o tua 6,000 o bobl. Wnaethon ni gais i Gronfa'r Loteri ac oedden ni'n llwyddiannus o'r cais hwnnw ddaru ymhenodi fi a gyrwr a staff eraill yn ogystal gan gynnwys rheolwr ar gyfer prosiect beics i ni. So mae o'n gyfuniad i ryw raddau be oedd Andrew a Willoughby'n sôn am. Da ni'n ffodus iawn i fod yn y sefyllfa bod gynnon ni gerbyda a beics. Da ni wedi cael gwahanol ffynonellau ariannu ar hyd y siwrna, ond bellach mae gynnon ni 4 cerbyd trydan. Mae un o'n nhw yn Nissan ENV 200 sydd yn hygyrch i Gadarolwyn. Mae gynnon ni fws mini 10 sedd sy'n hygyrch i Gadarolwyn. Mae gynnon ni gar MG, car teulu neu estate, a mae gynnon ni mae gynnon ni fan fach Nissan Tecna, da ni'n ddefnyddio i gludo bwyd, a da ni newydd dderbyn fan bws mini newydd sbon ddoe, na i sôn am honno yn y man. Yn bwriad ni fo'n gwaith ydy cefnogi pobl yn ardal ni sydd angen cludiant, enghraifft i fynd i'r fferyllfa, i ysbytai, ond hefyd i ddigwyddiadau cymdeithasol. Da ni'n credu bod hynny'n bwysig iawn, bod pobl ddim yn cael ei ynysu a bod yr elfen yna yn holl bwysig ar gyfer llesiant hefyd. Felly, bellach yn 4 blwyddyn, da ni wedi cael dipyn o brofiad erbyn hyn, wedi dysgu y ffordd galad weithiau, ond wedi cael nifer o wersi difyr, a da ni wedi mynd i sawl maes. Da ni wedi trio sawl peth gwahanol. Oedd Andrew'n sôn am glwb ceir. Mae gynnon ni gerbyd clwb ceir yma ym Bethesda, a'r rwydwaith, diolch Matt, y llun top chwith Carnedd yn Carni sydd ar rwydwaith Co-Wheels. Mae pobl yn ymaelodi dros y we ac yn gallu defnyddio'r car hwnnw, sydd yn debyg i be mae Andrew'n wneud i raddau, a mae o'n digwydd hefyd yng Nghaernarfon, a mae yna rei ledled Cymru. Y llun ar y dde ydy Efan y cerbyd efo un o'n defnyddwyr ni sydd wedi cael dipyn o ddefnydd o'r cerbyd. Ar y chwith mae'r fan, gyda ni arian gyn Llywodraeth Cymru ar gyfer gludo bwydydd cynhyrchwyr lleol. Da ni'n teimlo bod hynny'n holl bwysig. Wedyn ar y dde mae'n bws mini trydan 10 sedd ni. Gyda ni hon trwy gefnogaeth Llywodraeth Cymru, a gafodd 2 yn partneriad, sef yr orsaf yn Pen y Groes, a drws i ddrws ym Mhen Llŷn, fysus trydan ar yr un pryd. A da ni'n defnyddio hon llynadd ar gyfer ceisio datrys heria parcio, lle bod chi wedi gweld ar y newyddion yn Nyffryn Ogwen. Mae'n debyg iawn i Ddyffryn Peris, lle mae pobl yn parcio yn bob man. Felly leihau faint o bobl oedd yn parcio ym mhob man. Da ni bellach yn defnyddio hon ar gyfer mwy o waith cymunedol gan bod Transport for Wales yn rhedeg mwy o fysus bellach. Mae gynnon ni'r gwaith hwnnw i'w wneud. O'n i'n sôn wrthych chi am yr cerbyd diweddara. Da ni newydd dderbyn ddoe bws mini trydan transit 16 sedd. A da ni'n ffodus iawn yma yn Nyffryn Ogwen. Mae gynnon ni hydro cymunedol yn ei Ogwen sydd wedi sefydlu ers sawl blwyddyn bellach, a mae'r buddion a'r incwm a'r elw mynd tuag at brosiectau cymunedol, a ddaru nhw benderfynu cefnogi ni brynu y bws trydan newydd. Fyddan ni ddefnyddio ar gyfer cludiant i ysgolion. Wedyn, mae'r gwaith yma da ni wedi ddatblygu, da ni wedi gweithio efo sawl partner, o'n i'n cyfeirio at partneriaid dolan. Yn amlwg, da ni wedi gweithio efo Cyngor Gwynedd a'r loteri fel yn cyllidwyr. Ond da ni wedi gweithio'n agos iawn yn gweld mae Michelle Kelsol o'r CTA yma heddiw. A mae'n diolch ni'n fawr iawn i'r CTA am yr holl gefnogaeth da ni wedi gael ac yn parhau i gael. A mae'n cama nesaf ni, da ni eisiau bod yn gynaladwy ar ôl diwedd yn Grant Lottery yn Hydref 2025. Wedyn, da ni'n gweithio fe'r CTA ar adnabod y cyfleoedd, a dwi'n meddwl bod yna gyfleoedd ledled Cymru, achos os da ni'n sbio rhai o'r cwmnïau masnachol sy'n gwneud y gwasanaeth, tydi i diddordeb nhw ddim yn y cymunedau, mae o'n hytrach ar dalu cyfrandalwyr rhai o'r cwmnïau. A'r sleid nesaf, os gwelwch chi dda, Matt? Welwch chi, o'n i'n cyfeirio at y cynllun beics sgynnon ni. Oedd Willoughby'n cyfeirio gyna doedd at feicio hygyrch. Welwch chi'r tandem ar y chwith. Da ni wedi gweithio mewn partneriaeth efo yn cwmni Canolfan a Hamdden lleol, cwmni Byw'n Iach, a Cymdeithas y Deithlion Gogledd Cymru. Welwch chi, os nwch chi edrych yn fanwl, da ni wedi gosod modur trydan ar y tandem, achos mae'r ddau berson sy'n reidio, fatha pob mynd chydig yn hyn, yn gweld ti'n dipyn o her i reidio beic bellach, ond mae cael modur trydan wedi cynorthwyo Dafydd y Gareth i reidio'r beic. Mae'r beics yn y canol wedyn yn feicio hygyrch, a mae'n debyg bod chi'n adnabod y person yn y llun ar y dde, Dirprwy Weinidog Lee Waters, ddaru o'n cefnogi ni gaethon ni arian trwy'r gronfa teithio llesol. Felly, rhwng bob dim, da ni wedi dod o at ei gilydd mewn ffordd eangfrydig, swn i ddweud, achos mae bob dim mae partneriaeth yn wneud. Da ni'n edrych ar 4 pilar cynaladwyedd, sef yr economi, yr amgylchedd, y cymdeithasol, a'r iaith a diwylliant. Mae hynny'r un mor bwysig i ni, a da ni'n meddwl bod y 4 yna yn cyd-blethu, a newch chi'n llwyddo efo un heb y llall. Wedyn, dyna beth sgen i. Dwi wedi gwibio drwyddo fod da ni'n gwneud gwaith tebyg i be mae Andrew wneud ac i'r fferyll, a fodlon iawn atab unrhyw gwestiynau. Dwi'n sbio ar y cloc, sgynnon ni'n llawer amser, so dwi am rhoi gorau i siarad wan a bod yn barod ar gyfer gwestiynau. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you very much, everyone, for all your contributions, really, and varied perspectives. What's coming clear, though, is that accessibility is really important. But on that note, I'm going to put it to the floor. Anybody have any questions for any of the conversations? Any questions?
I have a question for Andrew Capel about the car hire scheme or the car share system. I was wondering, I mean, my main question is about, you must have an insurance provider. And did you simply go to an insurance provider, and do they have like some sort of like rate?
I'll stop you there because the insurance is a real tricky thing these days. I mean, to start with, we went to the NFU, but over the years, a number of insurance providers have disappeared, and right now there is nobody that will insure community car clubs. What do you call it, a market failure? I don't know, but the last provider are not providing renewals. So we are actually working with various people to try and solve this solve this problem. Sorry, because it needs to be sorted. They've run scared. We aren't a risk. They don't really understand us. Some of them don't really want to understand us, just take our money, and then they get cold feet. So I don't have a good word to say about many insurance providers at this moment. I'll save that.
I would say that I think it's for all of us, I think a lot of us are out here doing things that we're kind of making up as we go along, things that don't exist in the society at large, and so, well, particularly insurance companies, trying to get an insurance company, and they're like, well, what does your business do? And I'm like, well, we do this and this and this, and they're like, ooh, we've no idea how much that's going to cost you.
Sorry, Willoughby, you might need to just have different insurance policies for different aspects of the business. So like obviously if you're employing people, you have a business policy for that side, I can't remember what it's called now, and then you have another business policy that would perhaps cover you for the cars, so you probably have to be with insurance people, you have to talk to them, you have to learn to communicate with them, because as soon as they hear a word they don't like, they could run away, even if you didn't mean it. They're very sensitive creatures, some of them. But yeah, I just think they have it's not I think we are working outside the box, and we have to learn to communicate what we're doing in a way that they will understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think Sean has a question as well.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me because my signal's awful. Keep dropping off. But you said, Hugh, that one of the reasons for you starting up your club was to resolve local parking issues, and I'd be interested in Andrew's take on this as well. Did it resolve the parking issues? If so, like, how bad was it before, and what's the measure by which you can see it's made a difference? Yeah, just a little bit of more detail about that would be really useful.
Diolch, Sian. Be wnaethon ni oedd gweithio efo Cyngor Gwynedd a awdurdod y parc. Mae'n anodd iawn cael atab yna, achos beth o'n ni'n neud oedd parcio a theithio, oedden ni'n cael dipyn o ddefnydd, ond mae'r niferoedd o bobl sy'n dod i Eryri ers Covid wedi mynd yn Lloerig. Wedyn mae yna dal heriau parcio, ond dwi'n meddwl bod o dipyn o Moronsan a Ffon i annog pobl i barcio'n gyfrifol, a un o beth eraill oedden ni eisiau gwneud oedd dod â pobl i bentra Bethesda yn hytrach na bod nhw'n mynd i barcio ar Wilod y Mynydd, cerdded i fyny'r mynydd a wedyn dreifio nôl i lle bynnag heb roed unrhyw beth yn ôl i'r economi. Da ni wedi cael rhywfaint o lwyddiant, ond y ffaith amdani allan ni'n osgoio, mae pobl wedi gwirioni fo ceir, do. Be da ni'n trio wneud ydy datrys be mae Henry Ford a bobl wneud ers cannoedd o flynyddoedd yn deud bod ceir y peth i ni gael, de. Dyna pam mae gymaint o bobl yn dreifio car ar ben ei hun. Wedyn, rhywfaint o lwyddiant, ond lot mwy o waith i'w wneud, swn i ddweud.
I'd just like to say something. I mean, parking isn't an issue, well, until I moved to Aberystwyth, but I mean, the reason I started a car club is because I didn't want to own a car anymore, and I just basically found 3 other people who shared that idea, and we took it from there.
Diolch. I think Edwin had his hand up, and then we go to Kate.
It was Kate first.
It was first.
Oh, Kate.
Oh, thank you, Gerwyn. I don't know if you can hear me. It's a bit similar to Sean's question, really. While I've been sitting here listening, I've just been thinking, how do you market your services? It's about behaviour change. How do we, because I'm looking at a similar thing in the area here near to where Sean is, how to get something started, how to get people to leave the cars and get on a shuttle bus, how to sort of incentivise that behaviour. I wondered if you had any successes or bright ideas.
Andrew, o'n i'n meddwl sa'ch chi'n mynd gyntaf, ti isio fi fynd gyntaf. Be da ni'n neud ydy, mae'r chnata mewn sawl ffordd, da ni'n lwcus, mae gennym ni swyddfa ar y stryd fawr ym Bethesda ar ymyl yr A5. Yn amlwg, da ni'n defnyddio'r cyfryngau cymdeithasol, ond dwi'n meddwl ceisio gweithio efo, dwi'n mynd jyst dweud am bod Michelle yma, ond ceisio gweithio efo bobl fel y CTA, Cyfeillion y Ddaear, sy'n gweithio ar newid ymddygiad, achos hwnnw be bynnag da ni'n trio wneud bod yn cael mwy o bobl i feicio neu i ddefnyddio gwasanaethau lleol. Mae'n hanfodol bod ni'n gwneud, ond dwi'n meddwl, gwneud y cyswllt personol yma. Be dwi ddweud ydy bob tro, yn diwedd, dio ddim am y beic, dio ddim am y car, dio hyd yn oed am y banc bwyd da ni'n rhedeg. Mae'n siarad efo bobl, os da ni'n methu gwneud hynna, mae di canu yna ni cyn dechrau.
Diolch. Gerwyn?
Falle cwestiwn i Hugh a Andrew eto. Yn wedi am pobl ifanc, ydy pobl ifanc, wel, yn meddwl am insurance, oes yna problem efo fel y ceir cymunedol a pobl ifanc yn gyrru nhw? yn enwedig. A meddwl am teuluoedd ble mae pobl ifanc dal yn byw efo'u rhieni. Dyna'r cwestiwn.
Gyda ystyriant, dim ond pobl sydd 25 oed neu mwy yn medru gyrru car gyda ni. Ond dwi'n meddwl, mae'n anodd ffindio yswiriant ac gyda pobl ifanc di ddim eisiau, they don't want to know about it. More llai na 25 oed, na, dim eto. Yn anffodus.
Swn i'n ategu be mae Andrew ddeud bod ni'n defnyddio darparwr gwahanol 25 ydy'r oedran, a da ni'n gwybod fel rhywun, mae gennym ni 5 cerbyd trydan, mae premiums cerbydau trydan wedi mynd i fyny yn ddiweddar ac yn dal i gynyddu, mae gen i ofn, ond dyna fod ni'n teimlo bod o'n gost sydd werth i gwynebu.
Diolch. Tony?
Hi. I was just wondering, Andrew, or anyone else who might kind of think it's relevant to them, do you have places that are already interested in an expansion of your schemes, or do you look to support new organisations to develop in those areas?
Right. So thank you, Tony. Great question. Basically, we've just been successful in securing a grant from the Welsh Government to expand community car clubs throughout Wales. So we are looking for people or organisations who want a car club in their area, but we like to see proof. So we need to find say 25 people who want a car club. They use a car club themselves, not just people who think it's a good idea. There's far more than there's plenty of those, I'm glad to say. But so we will go where we are invited to. We will not impose this on anybody. And we know from experience that doesn't work.
So if there were 25 people who were interested in joining together for a club, would they need to form their own car club, or would that then be sufficient to sit underneath Trip 2 and?
Yes, I mean, I would say when you've got the 25 or thereabouts, is talk to me. But I will also I'll come and talk to you. I'll come and meet you. We'll talk about how it can work with you in your area. Yeah, we have, if you like, we have a model, but actually that model has to be adjusted to local needs. So yeah, we're very, very, very keen on that we're not imposing. We were going to save you a lot of time and money because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. But we want to make sure it works and that we can have those people, the first people that started are like the roots. So if we want it rooted in your community, because once it's rooted, it can grow like it has done in Machynlleth and Llanidloes. Yeah, they've been going, Machynlleth has been going, what, 25, maybe longer, 25 years, and Llanidloes about, 27 years, and Llanidloes 17 years. So, it's very important to have that, roots, or the core group, as it were, to start it off.
I think we need to have another conversation, Andrew, possibly.
Okay. Yeah.
Very soon.
Yeah. That's really great, Tony. Diolch.
Oh, diolch yn fawr pawb. Just one question from me, which I think would be really interesting, is around financial sustainability with your models. So for Andrew, you've talked, is it £3 an hour, I believe you, to hire a car, or £42 for 24 hours. So, and the cost of insurance and stuff. So in terms of financial modelling, is it generating its own income, or are you based on a grant stroke income? What's your model, your financial model then? in terms of sustaining the business?
Well, as it stands at the moment, we're not financially sustainable. We were up until we got our first EV, because the cost of insurance went up and the cost of the cars was obviously, more significant. But we're working on it. I mean, I'll say this is early days. We've been going, 17 years, but in terms of the new model we're working in, we are dependent on, the financial input. But if we were a commercial company, we'd have to do the same. We'd have to raise money in the market to get going. So I've no shame in that, but we are working towards making it financially, and insurance is part of that, because Hugh said it was very expensive, and we're paying 200 plus per month per car.
Diolch. What about you, Hugh? What's the model? Because a lot of yours is for social, locally, by the sound of it, isn't it? So what's your financial model and how you balancing both?
Ar hyn o bryd mae gennym ni ariannu loteri sy'n cefnogi'r gwaith da ni'n neud, ond fel Andrew, tydi o ddim yn gynaladwy'n sefyll ar ben ei hun. Be da ni'n gorfod wneud ydy defnyddio arian o wahanol lefydd, ond dwi'n meddwl mae pwynt nath Andrew, tasa yna gwmni masnachol yn neud o, a rhaid ni gofio enghraifft yn achos buses, mae heini yn cael subsidies mawr iawn gyn yr awdurdodau lleol a gyn y llywodraethau. Wedyn, be da ni eisiau, mae rhaid i ni gael rhywfaint arian dod i fewn o fo mwyn profi'r achos. Oedd Andrew yn sôn am mynd ers 17 mlynedd, yn Sir Benfro, maen nhw'n mynd ers dros 20 mlynedd nes at 30, ond mae'n cymryd amser i ni wneud bethau da. Am diwadd, mae rhaid i ni fuddsoddi.
Diolch. One more then, just for Willoughby, because I am really conscious that we are approaching the end. So, Willoughby, you talked about some of your groups and that the work that you do breaks down lots of barriers for people just starting to get out on their bikes and engaging. Out of interest, do you have any information on the number of people that you've engaged with who have continued to ride bikes? You're on mute.
I know that of the number of people, it's difficult because it's there's the people there's some projects that I've just done since the beginning, like running an all abilities cycling group. I don't call it a club, just like a group, and we do a ride once a month. And that's been going from the beginning. But that's a lot harder to monitor, because it's much more informal. I know that of the people that I have worked with in the various projects, they have continued to cycle. Most of them, because they're beginner cyclists, they're not really using it for commuting. Most of them do continue to cycle regularly when there's good weather for recreation and purposes, and they've continued to engage in it. But that's going the only those projects have only been ongoing for 2 years, so whether it's like a whole lifestyle change, I don't know yet, but they have,
Brilliant. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you very much. It's really interesting to listen to everybody's contribution. And what's really interesting is that everybody's on a different journey, and we're all facing lots of different barriers that we've got to overcome. And hopefully, especially from an insurance perspective, perhaps the policyholders can help negotiate with us some different terms conditions, because otherwise we're not going to be, we're always going to be facing these barriers. So the next steps then is we're going to end this recording, and this recording is going to be available to you all. Matt will put it up on, where are we going to put it up, Matt?
It will be on Egin's website, YouTube channel, sorry. Yeah, once we've added our subtitles for the translations.
So, and if you're all happy, we'll be more than happy to share emails for you to continue some of these conversations and you to link up and have better understanding of each other's projects. Anybody unhappy with that? You can let me know. Yeah? No, brilliant. Thank you very much, everyone.
Just to say, there's been a couple, Tony's asked for a couple of people's email addresses in the chat, Garin and Kate. So I don't know if those email addresses want to be either put in the chat for everyone or directly to Kate, directly to Tony. Let's do that before we close off. But yeah, if anyone else wants to add their email address in there so that people can get in touch with them, feel free, and we'll close it in a minute. So you've got a chance.
Diolch yn fawr, pawb.
Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr.
Hwyl.
Thank you very
Recording now.
much.
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.
Ta-ra.